Well, hello again. Welcome to the Sports Reform Podcast. I'm Scott, along with JT and Jeff, coming back at you again for episode 4. Again, part 2 of the NFL minor league discussion. Got a lot to get into. Again, if you want to reach out to us, get in touch with us at sportsreform@gmail.com. You can always call in, leave us a message at 530-377-6787, or more simply, 530-3sports, and also hit us up on Twitter at the Sports Reform. And with that being said, let's take it away. Cue the music.
All right, so jumping back into where we left off last week, part 1 will be in the description. You can find a link there. So
It's a good place to start if you didn't.
yeah,
Right.
so we highly suggest you go back and just get at least the introduction part of this, just to get caught up. But
And you
we're
can
talking.
subscribe to make sure you don't miss any other episodes.
Yes, indeed, and throw a like on that video too.
Here, somewhere. They always point
Probably
to it.
over in that direction.
Mm-hmm. All right, so last week we introed and kind of laid out a basic idea for our NFL minor league system. This week we're getting a little bit more in depth with it, not necessarily the layout of the league or anything, but we're going to get into some more just specifics of what the league would look like, how it would be run, and that sort of thing. All right, so and just to recap. Again, go back and watch the full video, but we proposed a 16-league team, but this week we're actually going to be talking
More realistic.
more
numbers.
realistically. So we actually are going to kind of be doing a little bit of double speak where we talk about a 16-team league, but then again, but we'll start with a more probable 8-team setup to where every conference or every division rather has their own minor league team, or 4 teams would share a minor league team. But we won't get necessarily into alignment. That was last week.
Yeah, we talked about kind of the divisional. We will hit a little bit about the scheduling, how the season would look to us watching at home or in the stands.
Right.
And as well, the bounce back and forth between how it affects the NFL teams.
Right.
All right, so let's start off at least part 2. We'll start talking about the roster, just the players that make up the team. Now, obviously, anytime you have a shared minor league team, there has to be a little bit of cooperation between the either the 2 or the 4 parent clubs, whichever system happens to be adopted. Realistically, it won't be either, but
Right.
but that way you don't wind up having a team that has 9 quarterbacks on it.
Right, and this is kind of why we looked at, as we've talked about before, we have the ECHL in Atlanta, and one thing we've seen a lot with that league is the NHL teams need their top goalie talent to get playing time. So you'll see, we had a Montreal Canadiens goalie for the Glads a couple seasons ago, even though we were not affiliated when we were out with. Were we still with Arizona at that time, or had we switched to Boston?
No, we were Arizona that season.
Okay, yeah. So, you might see stuff like this in this league where there might be too many quarterbacks on the team that you're supposed to send to, so you farm them out for some room.
And also that season, well, I think our most played goalie only played 15 games. We couldn't keep a healthy goalie that entire season.
Or the AHL team above us couldn't keep one either.
But that does speak to the kind of like the injury
Right.
injury prospect of, if a team has their half their quarterback core injured, or they go down, a receiver or a lineman or something, they could feasibly shop around. So it's not like a hard and fast
Right.
like a hard and fast roster rule like you see in baseball, where your AAA team is only
Right.
players under your control.
Right. Well, you also have how many rounds in the MLB draft?
30 or something like that.
Lot. Yeah, you draft a new team every year, so
Yeah, basically. Unless you're the Braves, in which case you draft a bunch of 18-year-olds coming off of Tommy John surgery. Sorry, not sorry.
#truth.
It also helps fix the roster positions. I think it really helps as well with what the NFL can struggle with sometimes. We kind of talked about this a little bit beforehand, but having certain positions where if you're only carrying so many on your team as the NFL team, if one or two go down, whether it's injuries, there can be other contract problems, whatever it is that keeps them off. You have people who are seeing playing time, who it's not someone who's been sitting on a bench for 10 games, not moving at all except during the week during training.
Yeah,
and you're getting someone who's
squad player.
Yeah, and you're getting more familiarity. You're actually getting hit, which I think really if you're someone who's been sitting down and for 10, 12 weeks, you get out on the field, you get hit once, and your body's just not used to it. You're not going to get back up as quick.
Yeah, practice squad quarterback who never gets it in practice.
Yeah, the red jersey says "Don't touch me."
So I will say this whole league, and we'll get into this, has to be anti-injury, especially if I'm taking a first-round draft pick quarterback and putting him in this league. He can't,
yeah.
We might have to have some modified. I don't know if we go to the extent of the red jersey. Maybe the first couple weeks, because this is a conglomeration, you have a red jersey because the linemen haven't been used to working together. But we can get into that a little bit later.
Part 3 and 4.
Yeah,
coming your
right.
way.
The wussification of football. But you can't have injuries in this league.
No, and now granted, there will be injuries. I mean,
Right.
That's just
Football.
the nature of sports, especially football. But
You don't want concussions.
yeah, you don't want. I mean,
Well, you prefer to have no concussions in the NFL as well.
yeah.
But this
Forget the NFL. They can handle their own problems.
But it really is, especially for the development purposes, you're really going to be overprotective, especially of shared players. And the major league teams are going to have to be really mindful of, their shared players and injuries.
Yeah.
And honestly, we briefly touched on this last week because of the cooperation, or when we split up the teams, we made sure there weren't really any rival teams sharing these systems. But I honestly don't think that the players in the minor league would intentionally try and sabotage their teammates or something like that. I mean, I could be wrong.
Yeah. To get this league off the ground from the dust of our imagination, I don't think that's going to be a huge deal. It's just getting these. Most of them are going to be the young guys right out of college, an opportunity to play.
They're trying to make the show.
Right. So you guys want to jump into the numbers kind of breakdown and number of players?
Yeah, let's now and just to set this up, a NFL roster excluding the practice squad is 53 players.
Right.
So what we're suggesting or proposing is in we have a couple iterations of this, but one of them is to cut your NFL roster to 50, but then that is made up with.
I would leave the NFL roster numbers the same.
Mm-hmm.
What I would do is say these are these last cuts. They
Right.
coming into week 4 of the preseason. So I would I'm gonna focus more on the 8-team scenario here instead of the 16 teams in this minor league, where you'll have 4 teams sharing. So each team in the NFL could send 10 players to the DL, and then the local DL team is responsible for 10 contracts of their own.
And the DL meaning
Developmental league.
Yes,
not
the minor.
Yeah.
disabled.
Yes,
Yeah.
the minor league.
Just clarify.
And that's true because in all honesty, I don't think an NFL team would send a kicker
Right.
down to the minor league.
Oh yeah, we've mentioned this. Your 3 local players, I think for sure: kicker, punter, long snapper. Now,
I mean, when you have one job,
right? But I would say those 3 positions probably have the best chance of being a local kid to make it to the NFL without being drafted.
That's true.
Which is going to make for
Especially-
really good headlines,
Right.
especially for the hometown.
Yeah, and especially too if they have decent numbers.
Right.
I mean, now granted, not necessarily they have this monster leg where your kicker can kick 65-yard field goals at the drop of a hat, but if he's sitting around 85-90%
Right.
accuracy on his field goals, and your kicker goes down or pulls a hamstring or something, call up your minor league kid.
Well, what team lost a long snapper a week? The next week they lost a second long snapper in the game, and then they were holding basically open tryouts on the sideline. I think it was the Eagles. They're holding like open tryouts for long snapper during a game. So this league, hey, he might not be your draft pick or whatever, but he's been long snapping at least this season.
Yeah.
been in practice, you go pick him up for the league minimum for a couple weeks, so you're regular.
Yeah, I mean,
and you can have the on assignment
Yeah.
or leave, so the local team doesn't lose his rights. I follow Arena Football a lot, and a lot of their guys will get picked up. The quarterbacks will get picked up to be a camp quarterback, so Tom Brady doesn't have to wear out his arm, or they'll get tryouts in Canada. So what they do is, this player goes on the other league as assigned, but the original team, when he gets cut, still has his rights to take him back.
yeah, there's anytime you deal with something like this, there's always the kind of the complicated legal
Yeah,
contract matters. But I mean that already exists in other sports leagues, and
yeah.
I'm sure the NFL has lawyers aplenty that
Mm-hmm.
could deal with just sort of this exact type of issue. So
And I don't think we've talked about it this way, but you can almost have this league to be where every NFL team says, I want to keep this player, but in the minor league, and they send him to the minor league, and then the minor league distributes the guys to make sure teams are even. So that way it's not necessarily franchise run at the lower end, but it says, all right, hey, this team's missing a wide receiver, give him a wide receiver. You could do something like that.
It would also help keep parity in the
Yeah.
teams as well, because you could have 4 teams completely stacked, and the other 4, it's just a nightmare having
Right.
to watch the games, and that's something that wouldn't make good for marketing and obviously TV and
well,
people
and also
going to
the minor
games.
leagues. I mean, typically there's no such thing as a minor league dynasty. Even if you had, I mean, at best, I mean, you have these teams, like in baseball, where they're in rebuilding mode, to where they have an absolutely stacked farm system for a couple of years.
Well,
But-
I'm not saying that
but
you're
yeah,
trying to
I mean-
avoid that, but you think about if you are looking for stability in this, especially with the first 8 teams starting out, and if you're wanting to move it to 16, you're going to have. I'm not saying that you want to cheat and prevent people from having good seasons, but if you're one of these smaller teams or one of these smaller towns, and you're trying to get one of these teams in, and your team doesn't win a single game for like 3 years straight, you're going to have a hard time convincing the city to keep the team as a viable option.
Yeah. We have rough numbers. We'll probably post, or we might even throw up the graphic here of general roster breakdowns. But I think that also might be team specific because
Yeah.
the local team can, fill in as they need. This rough number roster size of 50 was just an estimate of what an NFL team looks like on a Sunday, plus a couple extra because we'll carry 50.
Yeah, well, and unlike an NFL roster, you have call-ups to also
Right.
worry about.
Yeah. And I think this might be a good segue into how these rosters or these contracts would look. I would base this personally in this model off kind of like the NHL. I would put all of these players on 2-way contracts, meaning they can go down or up.
Yeah, well, at least in the minor leagues.
Right. Not in the NFL,
Yeah,
but all these
I'm
players
sure.
that are cut or sent down. Obviously, your first round pick, I wouldn't consider him cut. He's a send down, and he won't have to clear any kind of waivers because if he has to clear waivers, this will never happen. But on that 2-way contract then would allow something to kind of go around the waivers. That way, as soon as there is an injury, boom, he can get called up. Or, hey, this guy just sucks on my NFL team. He's been developing well. This league's done its job. Cut the one guy, pull up the other guy, and move on with life.
So anyway, just in terms of a roster breakdown, and these are not really hard and fast, or even minimums, but with an 8-team league, we say, okay, probably 4 quarterbacks would be a good number to go with. I know NFL teams usually only carry 2 or 3.
All right.
But that way each team gets a quarterback in the minor league system.
Which is really what this league needs to develop. We're hitting that gap now where there's not enough coming out of college.
Yep. Let's see. We have a receiver core of 6. That's pretty typical for an NFL team.
Yeah.
Some teams go as few as 5, some as many as 8 or 9.
And most of those guys are pulling double duty anyway on special teams.
Yeah,
so-
special teams.
So
Yeah.
it helps. I mean, honestly, all these positions are doing. I mean, with the exception of quarterback and
Mm-hmm.
kicker,
and on
kicker,
it-
punter.
And if this were, or truth be told, most of these guys when they get called up, they would be special teams players
Right.
anyway.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not at a premier position of a wide receiver, a quarterback, or even a running back. But anyway, getting back to the roster breakdown, we tentatively say 8 offensive linemen. That's
one more than it's carried on a game
yeah
day.
on a game day scenario in the NFL.
So you can develop 2 offensive linemen is kind of what that thought process
Right, yeah,
was.
2 offensive linemen. 4 running backs. That's I think most NFL teams only carry 3.
Yeah,
Although that if you include fullbacks in that,
Yeah.
which that's
a dying breed.
yeah, it is a dying breed. Some teams they'll I think
2
that-
in the NFL last year.
it might come back eventually,
I think
depending
we've
on
really
how.
got the Giants and the Ravens are about it that I can remember. And
Yeah, there weren't many.
Yeah, well, they are going to a pass-heavy league, but anyway, that way each team does get a running back, and truth be told, it'll probably be backed by committee, just like you would see.
Oh yeah,
in the
and I think running back is a position. I personally see that as right now in the NFL. If you're a new drafted running back going against a veteran running back, the biggest difference I've noticed is these newly drafted ones don't know how to pass block.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be a great league. Send them down to learn how to pass block. Once then the next year, veteran goes away. Now you have this kid ready to plug in. So that's kind of why I think a lot of teams will utilize the quarterback and running back positions because the running backs have a big gap, and a lot of them can run. There's no doubt in that.
well, I mean, to even get into the NFL or even into the draft or come from a big name college, you have to be able to run the ball.
Right. So it's that. I think that's the piece they're missing.
All right, but also kind of along the same lines, 4 tight ends. That way, each team can have a tight end.
And I think most carry 3, so it's not that high.
And typically speaking, and if you know NFL rosters, they would carry like a receiving tight end or one that's primarily a receiver, one that's primarily a blocker, and then the hybrid ones they're rare, but that can be your backups.
Right, but this league might be a place to develop that too. now.
Yeah. Anyway, on the defensive side of the ball, at truth be told, this would probably vary by team depending on how they would run the defense.
Right, if you're a 3-4.
Yeah,
or
we
4-3.
kind of base these estimations on a 4-3 offense.
Yeah, defense.
Or sorry.
and we didn't even count the Wildcat offense. For
Yes.
for the offense, so I mean,
Quarterback, who needs one of those? Direct snap every time. But 8 defensive linemen for a 4-3. That gives you
two
two-
lines.
2 lines essentially. But each team would have 2. We said 5 running backs.
linebackers.
Or I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm 5 linebackers. I'm
And
off today.
that was one kind of. We were at 49 players.
Yeah.
Let's go with an extra linebacker.
And truth be
Whereas-
told, that 5th linebacker, he could be a local kid.
Right, he's probably gonna be a local kid. He could be that kind of or that hybrid safety linebacker that we're starting to see, or
Yeah, kind of the undersized linebacker, but oversized safety.
right. or the end hybrid too. So that position has a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, kind of the Jadeveon Clowney or Mario Williams would
Yeah.
probably be a better
right.
analogy.
So it's that position that needs a little bit of fine tuning. But yeah, it's probably gonna be the local kid there.
Anyway, and then rounding out the defense, we said 8 defensive backs. Typically speaking, it's very rare anymore to see a pure cornerback or a pure safety. Almost every defensive back is capable of pulling double
And
duty. I mean,
you
there are
probably
exceptions.
get a few locals in this
That's
pod as well.
And then obviously a kicker, a punter, and a long snapper.
Yeah, and as we talked about, those would be probably locals. So, so when we think these players would get sent down, this team would form when the season might be, because we all want to know when we get to watch some football that isn't the Browns or the Tennessee Titans versus the Jaguars in puke green jerseys. On what we propose to be the Thursday night league. My personal preference was to see this league start around 2 or 3. This is again for the 8-team schedule.
Yep.
Start week 2 or 3, that because we don't want to see injuries. We need to let these guys get together and get some basic.
Yeah, some OTAs,
right.
even a small mini camp.
Yeah.
Learn a. And we talk about this in a minute, but what would the playbook look like? Would it probably be a very vanilla, basic playbook? But
Right.
they'd still have to learn it.
Right. So you got to learn it. Defense might, be. I think defense is gonna have the biggest learning curve because you can go from a very basic college defense. There's only a few out there that run very complex defenses in college football. Most of them sit in a Tampa 2 and say, my athletic ability is better than your athletic ability. Clemson probably ran one of the more complex defenses this year. Ohio State sat back and said, we have athletes, let's go.
Yeah, I
Now-
mean, Clemson won a national title
Right.
for it too.
Right. I will say, what was the only position group that looked good against Clemson for Ohio State?
Well, why don't you tell us, Mr. Buckeye fan?
I would say the cornerbacks. They were the only position group that looked good.
Yep.
By the way, that makes Deshaun Watson maybe not NFL ready and need this league.
Hey,
There you go.
he's a
that's
local.
why I brought
He's a
that up.
local kid too. He's
Yeah.
right up the road in Gainesville, Georgia.
So, I would like to see this start week 2 or 3 of the NFL season. So if they get cut in the week 4 of the preseason, that's about a 2-week camp. You should be able to do that. And then play for the 8-team league. I would do 10 games. You play 6 games against your conference. We break it into 2 4-team conferences. You play 6, so home and away, and then you play each team in the other conference. Top team from each conference. There's your championship game, and move on with life.
Yeah, and at that level, there's probably no need for a 4-team playoff.
No. I mean, even thinking about a 16-team league, I still almost thought top from each conference.
Yeah.
But because I would do for 16 teams, I would do a 12-game league or 12-game season. You play your division opponents. So that was going to be 2 4-team divisions per conference.
I mean, unless you went to like a 6-team playoff and that like mirrored what the
No.
NFL does.
No,
but
I wouldn't.
Even that's.
I would do it most each division winner makes it,
Mhm.
and do it just to semifinals and move on with life. Because again, no
Although
injuries.
that's an area though where you can experiment to where it's not necessarily each division winner, but you take the top 4 teams overall.
Yeah, that would be interesting too. And something I want to talk about in future episodes for the NBA is playoff.
Yeah, realignment.
Yeah,
of,
reformation.
And you could also have other incentives too with the playoffs, knowing that it's not just some like championship just to move on, but
Right.
in my mind, it's something that would make it even more incentivizing if you could have roster spots like parceled out in the NFL for the winning. Like you could have special perks for, okay, if you win, here is your shot. Like it makes it worth something for these leagues, as well as obviously you want to groom your players, but making it matter a little bit more instead of just like, oh yeah, we're just training you for future, but oh well, you're training and now you get to do something with it.
Well, and I think when you guys mentioned a roster call up at the end of the season.
yeah, do something like the baseball does, where
Yeah.
the last month of the season in September you expand your big league roster from 25 to 40 players, even if it's just a practice squad
Right.
type thing. I mean, now maybe if they did something, you could you could expand your game day roster to 53. I mean, I know we're getting into.
Yeah, that's a lot of
I mean,
that's a
at-
lot
at
of
the-
reform.
At
Right
that
there.
at that point in the
Well,
season,
we're
to
all
limit
about the
injury bugs,
reform. But that's true.
I mean, you
that's
might
true.
convince some people pretty readily. Like coaches would probably be like, "Yeah, 5 more players, let's do this."
Especially too, like at that point in baseball, when you go to 40 rosters, you bring up specialists.
Right.
A base running specialist,
yeah,
a contact hitting specialist, or a lefty coming out of the pen who can just shut down a left-handed batter. But
I'd be intrigued. Maybe if you have 10 in this developmental league, put 5 on the active roster that can go play game day, and 5 in the practice squad roster.
that's a possibility.
I don't know if I increase my game day roster, but I increase my limit on active players that can go to game day.
The possibilities with that are
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
endless. I wanted to jump back just real quick, just to take a second and have a little bit of a disagreement. We kind of talked about this just a minute beforehand, but with the schedule, I had a little bit different idea, and you guys can let me know, shut me down for being stupid, a little bit loud on this. But my idea for the season is similar to Jeff's idea. The only difference is changing it to where it starts just a little bit earlier, and you can start and have a little bit more hype. I know a lot of especially on social media now, but with things like fantasy, and especially sports media, they really get kind of crazy for football before it starts. And so you have a lot of this hype. And I know some fantasy leagues that draft, in my opinion, way too soon. You have a lot of coverage and a lot of things that start, a lot of preliminary.
Before the preseason, you have your draft. You're like,
Yeah.
those hurt.
You have a lot of preliminary things. And for me, having like an extra bite of football, I don't want to overshadow college, because I know college is already pushed back just a little, kind of to help with that.
College starts the week.
I think
Labor Day
it's
weekend essentially. Now.
Yeah, and I think it's like a week or week and a half, depending on which schools you are. But if you started the developmental league just a few weeks earlier, then you could actually have a little bit more press coverage, a little bit more hype for it, especially starting off. And I know this is where we get into the disagreement because we have things like you have to cut the rosters. You are really trying to avoid injuries. But as far as more from the business standpoint, I think it would be better for the leagues. Might not be best. There's a lot of logistics that you have to work out for the roster issues. But as far as especially inauguration, where if these 8 teams started, next year or the year after next, if you don't have some inertia moving forward in the initial season or two, it might just die off before it gets any traction.
Well, because we had talked about this before, this just kind of clicked. What if you make it something like the NASL? It has 2 seasons. They have a fall and the spring league.
Mm-hmm.
So what if you said, all right, the first year we're going to start in the fall. Year 2 of this league, though, we're going to have a 6-week season right after the NBA and NHL finals end. Because this is a dead time for football. You take a week off for your OTAs, or 2 weeks off because I'm going to get 10 days. So you take 2 weeks off, and you have 3 games before it, 3 games after it. So that'd be real football right now in this June period. And the end, when were OTAs? They were the beginning of June.
Yeah, usually.
So you would have real football May, end of June, and a week in July. And then you take a couple weeks off, and then you get your fall season, which is the real season or the big season.
Yeah, well, especially if you made those like night games, because between you and me, I don't think a lot of football players would like having to play outdoors in the middle of the heat of the day.
You
but
could still make this your Thursday night game.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, because right now on Thursday night, what is there to watch?
a lot of sitcoms.
I was going to say it was NCIS.
But it's going to be a rerun.
Yeah,
Hi,
it's
Mom.
a TV show.
You got Major League Baseball. You have soccer really doesn't play on Thursdays.
No, soccer has the weekly schedule.
Every now and then hockey.
Right now you're in May.
Well, yeah.
Right now, baseball is the only professional sports league that's playing
on weeknights. Yeah, because soccer is going to go Wednesday if there's a weird game, and then Saturdays or Sundays. So
Saturdays and Sunday or Sundays.
And that's going to be some. People are going to want to watch football because they've been deprived of it for months now. May you're 3 months deprived of the Super Bowl. So
I think the only issues you could run in there is with training camps, trying to match up with the pros.
Well, that's what I would make, kind of like how FIFA has these international friendly windows. Say, all right, you have 2 weeks, or you give the teams 3 weeks. You get 3 weeks of a window for OTAs. And pretty much everyone's occur almost the same time period anyways. So it's not really that much shifting. So you play 3 before, 3 after in the minor league. And it's more conditioning. I wouldn't have this year's draft picks in that season. I would say they start the fall season.
Yeah, usually there's rookie mini camps that are
that
longer than OTAs anyway.
Right, and that's what they would be going to. So the spring season would be the team from the previous season.
I think plus it gives you more options. You can even go moving towards from the draft, really prepping for those first preseason games, thinking a lot more to your full NFL season as well as your developmental league season.
Right.
Well, that brings up an interesting idea. What do you do with like the Hall of Fame game then? Because I've always never been a huge Hall of Fame game person.
I was going to say you could do things even like.
I understand what they're trying to do with it. I totally get what the NFL's trying to do with it, and obviously the Hall of Fame's a huge deal, and it's. I mean, that's almost probably every player's goal. If it's not to win a championship, it's to get into the Hall of Fame. And so I understand the whole purpose of, hey, let's play a football game to commemorate this. But honestly, I wouldn't even say it rises to the level of an exhibition game. You have your starters out there for a drive, if that.
Yeah, or if the field is playable.
I mean, and that's when you have 6 strings of play. I mean, that's where your roster. That's the part of the season, the preseason, where the roster's so large, where you have 5th and 6th string quarterbacks, and you're playing, the fourth quarter, some guy from Northwest State Tech College of Kansas or something.
I mean, do you move the Hall of Fame game later and make it the championship game of this league?
That could work.
Yeah. So you could do things like that, and then even maybe change up the Pro Bowl. You could have like
Young Guns
A
versus
versus B team. Like, I mean, there'd be a lot of possibilities where you can mix it up, and I think the overall enjoyability, because you're giving people more football, which right now in America is never a bad idea. Like,
No.
more football, you can't see, like, as soon as football season ends, you see it all over social media, you see it all over the sports media.
You already have the
countdown
countdown to
to
next
countdown
year.
to football.
Countdown to
100
football. You know, and there's a lot of people that joke, you know, oh, it's just baseball, all these sorts of things.
The SpongeBob meme sitting there by himself.
Yeah, well,
SpongeBob
I mean,
has a
even
meme
like the
for
local
everything in football.
sports talk radio, or one of the local sports talk radio stations here in Atlanta, they have the 100 days countdown to college football, to where they do like a 15-minute segment on
Yeah.
some college football story every day.
And I think just the integration, the fun factor that goes along with it as well, would really be a plus, both for the league, and then we mentioned for the local teams. Like, you think about the local players. We mentioned Deshaun Watson. I know, like, college-wise, big deal for Clemson, but in Gainesville, Georgia, he's a big deal. Knowing how much he means to the community, having someone if there are special teams, I'm not bragging or ragging on special teams, I should say, but some people might not care about as much kicker or care as much about a kicker. I would. I think that's really cool. But if you had a kicker or a safety or someone from your town who was like a walk-on to the team, make it into the NFL, and that person plays in the Super Bowl like 3 years after they're in the developmental league, that's a really big story for your city.
And I would have open tryouts for this team.
Yeah, especially for your local roster slots. I mean,
Yeah,
why not?
10. You could have all sorts of tryouts for 10 positions.
Yeah.
And you have to add in requirements, obviously, for things because this couldn't be I think with the way that college is set up, you do have the one and dones, but you would have to have some requirements for college.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because right now the current rule is 3 years removed from high school.
I'm going to disagree with you on this. What about those players who can't academically make it into college?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah,
This league could
you
be a
could
great
make-
fit for him.
yeah, you can make it to where it's still 3 years removed from college to get into the NFL, or 3 years removed from high school to get into the NFL. But you can go
Play in this league
play in the developmental league. I mean,
right out of the gate.
Yeah. Either that or a year or something.
You look at, there's got to be so many players that have the talent but don't have the academics. Cardell Jones tweeted dumbly, because he did get his degree, his first year at Ohio State, I didn't come here to go to class. I came here to play football. That's a darn true statement. It's sad, but it's true.
That's a lot of
Right.
That's probably 90% of
Right.
major D1 college football players.
But even going to
even
that,
athletes too.
so like skipping college, not that skipping college is a bad thing. Like, I think some people just aren't meant to go to college. That's fine. But even with that, you could help with some of these kids who are maybe skipping college, or maybe, if they're in more of like a rough position in their life. Not saying that the people who go to college are always like the more privileged, that sort of thing. But you could have the developmental league be both on and off the field. I'm not saying that you have like classes, that sort of thing, but you're
Wouldn't be a
giving
horrible idea.
you're giving more college and non-college students who wouldn't have opportunities otherwise to still invest in something that they're passionate about, something that gives their life maybe a little bit more purpose than just whatever other job they might be able to find, whether it's you have to go be an accountant somewhere instead of being on the field, or if you have to go.
Even in today's NFL, that's part of the rookie mini camps. There are actually classes there on how to, finances, how to deal with the media, how to.
Yeah.
Everyone needs a social media.
Yeah, well, not just
check
social,
right
not
now.
just social media, but
the questions,
quote,
microphone
what
in your
was it,
face.
that was the old the old Colts coach. Don't press send.
sounds like a Tony Dungy
Yeah,
quote.
Tony Dungy, thank you. Yeah, don't press send. So, but yeah, I mean, I'd let kids come right into this.
Yeah, and that gives you. Well, I think at least at first it would lend a little bit of credence to it. Although, I think college football, especially the Big D1, that will still get more publicity than a minor league system of the NFL. So I mean,
right? The kids
So
gonna have to
it-
choose. Do I try to go to the Power 5
and
and
be
come
able,
out and be a first-round pick.
yeah, come out or at least be marketable.
Right, because I looked up this year's first-round draft picks are slotted to make 1.5 to 5.6 million. That's from 1 to 32 this year's, or 32 to 1 technically, of this year's picks. But after that, it drops off.
Yeah.
So what I did, I came up with some numbers for this league because that might entice these kids to come here to get that better talent. You know, I would say if you're an NFL drafted player, round 1, you get your contract in this league. So if you get sent down, because your quarterbacks are not going to want to get sent down here and then make P. Diddley. So they get their contract. If you're drafted in rounds 2 through 7 and sent down, I would say you make around $150,000 a season. And then if you get called back up, then you get your agreed upon contract. If you're an undrafted rookie that gets signed and you don't get cut but you get sent down, make about $80,000. I would say local players make it up to the team, but you can pay up to $100,000 for that initial season, and then increase their salary, 30%, whatever, the next season. Have it structured for that. If you're in this league 2 years, I would say maybe if you're a drafted player that signed free agent, increase 30%. That's a little bit less than the percentage you get in your NFL bump contract, because I think it's like 50-some percent or 48% for those first-round picks. If you're in the league 3 years as a drafted player, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think an NFL team's going to waste 3 years on you, but it could. You get a smaller bump.
Well, that could also apply to the local players.
Right. But I would also do this. I'd have a Rule 5, or whatever you want to call it, draft. That if you're in this league 2 seasons and you're not called up to the NFL, other teams can take you. Kind of like what Major League has. I forget how many seasons it is in the MLB. If you're in the minors, you can get redrafted without making it up. So I'd have something like that too. That way players aren't stuck in this league.
Yeah, that actually would bring an interesting, at least, trade dynamic.
Right.
I was going to say it makes the players more marketable too. I think it would help the player aspect of it, because unfortunately a lot of times what you see with these rules, I'm not saying they're always keeping the players down, but since the NFL is a business, a lot of times the rules, the way contracts are written, they benefit the league, not the individual players.
And I would say the NFL probably has the most boring trade deadline of the
week
majors.
6.
Right. I would extend that out here.
Yeah, there's no.
And now you have trade bait.
Well, you could do what the hockey season does, or what the NHL does, is you're allowed to trade players after the trade deadline, but they're not allowed to play that season.
I kind of like what baseball does,
where they have to clear waivers.
Yeah, I mean it still allows, but I would push that trade deadline back, and now you have actual minor league development you could trade, and that trade deadline actually got somewhat interesting.
Or, yeah, and it'd probably get a little bit convoluted to have 2 trade deadlines, one for the big leagues and one for the minor leagues. But
10.
Yeah, and that goes back to, okay, let's say you are the major league club and you have 3 injured quarterbacks and you call up your guy, but you need another one.
Right.
Do you try and go sign, an unsigned veteran in his mid-30s, or do you, pick up a phone and say, hey, we'll give you a 7th or 8th round draft pick.
Yeah.
If we'll take your minor league quarterback off your hands that you don't really want anyway. It's just a roster fill. Or if for some odd reason a local team had a quarterback on their, it was one of their local guys, you can call the local team
and Kurt Warner. That's kind of how he was. He was an Arena Football League quarterback. Yeah. The Rams went through 2-3 quarterbacks and they're like, crap, he looks good. And now Hall of Famer. Soon
to be, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he's made it in just yet.
But I think that kind of covers this league. I think we haven't beaten it to death yet, but I think we've kind of built a solid foundation.
Yeah.
So it's gonna happen. Is what I'm hearing. We are making
spread
progress.
the word.
Reform is coming.
If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or any ideas that we missed, reach out to us. Send us an email at sportsreform@gmail.com. Drop us a tweet at the Sports Reform. Find us on Facebook. Comment in the video below. We go through our comments. Just let us know what you're thinking. We're talking about maybe trying to do some more live stuff too in the future to do take phone calls and whatnot. If that's something you're interested in, just drop comments below and we'll try to make this very interactive and fun for you guys too. So, but let's make this.
And we're also open to suggestions.
Right.
Because we know if an entire minor league system was built on our own opinions, it probably wouldn't live for very long. Because we're not any kind of sports marketing gurus or anything like that.
There's probably someone in the NFL right now who, if they were listening, they're like, can't do this, and this because of this, and this.
Exactly.
But that's what we're here for. It's the ideas, the conversation. It's a whole lot of fun, if nothing else.
Yeah, so next time you go out and buy a copy of Madden, you can set this up.
Is that what we need to do?
Have the folks that have the video game folks start a minor league system in the game.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to our next segment. We've had this every week. Again, continuing on, it's our positive star of the week. And just as a reminder, for all your Moosely hat needs, Moosely Hats is the place to go. Again, we talk about it every week. Just want to, again, bump it up. We love Moosely Hats. Moosely Hats loves us. It goes both ways. Again, check them out, Moosely Hats, Moosely hats.com. Check them out. We think you're going to love them. We'd appreciate it. Go over, give them a like, share.
They also,
same thing for us.
They don't just do hats, too. They do other...
They do mittens.
Yeah, you can get mittens, or you can get a nice scarf if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah, all sorts of fun stuff. But for our positive star of the week, I'm just going to read the headline and then pass it off, because this is one of those headlines that first made me stop and think, ooh, clickbait. Because we live in a world where clickbait is a problem.
Very
and
much
you if you're on the internet, you see these things where it's like, oh, great positive story. And then you're into, why am I looking at these different celebrity pictures? It's ridiculous. But the headline just simply reads, heroic. MLB umpire makes split-second decision and saves a woman's life.
And this was highly publicized this week, so you probably all know the story. And I know we usually try and find an obscure story that it's buried on a back page somewhere, but this was so positive that we felt like this deserves all the recognition that it could get. But as most of you know, MLB umpire John Trampagne, he was
34.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's important. His age is important.
Yeah, every news story mentioned he was 34. I have no idea what that has to do with it. But he was out for a run before calling the balls and strikes at an evening game in Pittsburgh, and he was walking back to his hotel room across the Roberto Clemente Bridge, sees a woman climb over the railing, and obviously he says something's off there. Goes and essentially prevents this woman from killing herself, from jumping off the bridge, even though by some reports she was trying to weasel out of his grasp. He ended up bear hugging her, apparently, and basically got some help from some some onlookers, and they ended up saving a woman's life.
And the reports can be different. There's always going to be a lot of different stories this different way. But, as far as the sports star of the week, we're really making an effort to include all these things. It's easy to kind of pick the things where it's like, oh, it's just a charity or something like that.
Right.
Really making a difference in someone's life. In this, this is probably the biggest single impact you can have on one single individual's life. And here's someone who is truly a sports star, because it's someone who is in the sports realm. Mm-hmm. Their name, they're not a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady, so they're not a household name. He is now, but it's both on and off the field.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we've kind of stressed before, with the other positive stars. I mean, most of these times it's things they're doing off the field.
Exactly.
It's not some great athletic triumph on the field, but in real life, day to day, they wake up, put on normal people clothes, go out walking on the street, and do fantastic things that really impact the world in a great way.
And too, something just kind of a follow-up to the story, because it only happened a couple hours before that night's game, it didn't become a big story yet, but the night after when the umpires were introduced, he got a standing ovation from the crowd at PNC Park.
When was the last time that happened?
Probably Ed Hockley when the real refs came back from the replacement refs in the NFL. But actually, I read something that's kind of interesting because if you know Pittsburgh or in PNC Park, the Roberto Clemente Bridge is the very yellow latticed bridge that's right outside of center field. It's a great view of it from the stadium. And I wonder if that was a distraction for him. Not that he was making bad calls or anything. He was making, but looking up at I saved a woman from jumping off that bridge a couple hours ago. I wonder how often that went through his mind during the game because he was calling balls and strikes. He's a home plate umpire, so he was staring at it essentially the entire game.
Wonder how the chatter went behind home plate with the catcher. Hey, what'd you guys do before the game?
I went for a run, had some dinner, saved a lady from committing suicide. How about you?
Took my dog for a walk. Possibilities are endless. Alrighty, well that just about wraps it up for us. I know we've got a few more things to get to, but again, if you enjoy the conversation, especially for the NFL minor league work around what we're looking into, we might have another episode, part 3, be on the watch. Might have other things coming up in the future after we hit a few other topics that are kind of coming our way. Again, if you want to join the conversation, hit us up on the different realms, and again, give us topics. We actually had someone suggest to us a good idea for another segment we're looking into, trying to get some more things in the work. We want to give more content, better content, so just give us those options. We'd love to hear them. And just rounding off real quick for sound off, send off. The thing that's been bugging us, I really like this because if sometimes I get asked, "Hey baby, what's wrong?" It's a
nothing
dangerous thing to answer. But this, I really get to air out my dirty laundry.
If you've ever dated anyone.
Yep.
Nothing does not mean nothing.
But
I'm fine.
Completely unsports related, although I think it could have sports parameters. Technology. It is a great thing up to a certain point. We're not going to see robot football players playing. We're talking about this D-League to get more people interacted in football. But when I call an insurance line to get some answers, I want to speak to a person first, and then if there's an opportunity for me to key something in on my phone technology-wise that works better than me reading off a number and someone else reading it back to me incorrectly and getting something wrong, I'm okay with that. I can type in numbers, but give me at least 15 to 30 seconds FaceTime with someone to where I don't have to sit through a 20-minute system saying option 1. Or
if you are calling about your account balance, say account balance.
Yeah, now they have it to where you can say instead of press.
Accounts balance.
I mean, I'm glad I have a not so thick accent in any sort of regional aspect, but just give me the option when I call anywhere. It's fine if I'm on hold even for a minute more to talk to someone, but don't send me in the workaround. And Don't take technology overboard. That's my sound off, send off.
Mine's a little bit obscure. So if I drop a bunch of references you don't get, that's fine. But Netflix recently came out with a series called The Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, or GLOW.
Which we haven't seen yet, and so we don't have any recommendation on the show itself.
But here's the thing: if you've ever, ESPN had an old show, as you know, on ESPN Classic called Cheap Seats. It had the Sklar brothers stand-up comedian. They did a couple of episodes highlighting the World or International Roller Derby League, I believe, from the '80s. But there was a lady that, they widely lampooned her. But her name was Dee Booher. Her nickname was Queen Kong. But she, when she was in college, this was back in the 60s, actually formed an organization called the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. And she's nowhere in the series. And she would have been a fantastic character. if you've seen the 2 or 3 episodes of Cheap Seats where they do the roller derby, they're on YouTube. Go and look them up. It's fantastic. And then try and get a hold of the producers of that show and go, why isn't this Dee Booher a character in this show? She needs to be. Because it is a comedy.
And comedy and sports just go so well together.
Yes. Put Queen Kong in Glow. That's obscure. Probably that went over
deep cuts.
90% of y'all's heads.
Probably.
And probably 90% of everybody who will ever see this video. But that's my thing.
Yeah. Real quick, well, I just let y'all know because this episode was so much longer with the hardcore content. We skipped our wonky rule of the week. We'll pick that back up next episode. My send off will be real short and sweet and to the point. Don't miss deadlines, people. You have a deadline a week out. Hit your deadline. Move on with life. Thank you. So wrapping up again, Scott's giving you the info. We'll give it to you again because we really want some involvement. Hit us up at sportsreform@gmail.com. By phone at 530-3SPORTS sports, or on Twitter at the Sports Reform. For Scott, JT, and Jeff, have a great day.